Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown.
So Jeff, what are we inducting into the Hall of Fame this time?
Alright, well, I've selected an episode of Father Ted.
Ooh.
That was an ooh of, I'm looking forward to this. I could see it in your facial expression.
Something I've not watched before.
You've never watched Father Ted?
No.
My goodness. Oh, Steve, you're in for a treat. Let me tell you. Hey. So basically I've selected an episode called Think Fast, Father Ted, and it's Series 2, Episode 2.
Okay.
Well, this will give me an opportunity to explain to you a bit about what Father Ted is. You might already know that Graham Linehan, who wrote Father Ted, is responsible for Black Books.
I know who Big Ted is.
Not sure about and Little Ted and all the other cast of characters. Yeah, so Father Ted, it's a great sitcom written by Graham Linehan and so on and so on, but we might get into that more later.
Recognise his name.
Yeah. From Black Books and the IT crowd. So, Father Ted, as you get from the title, he's an Irish Roman Catholic priest, and he works on Craggy Island where he lives with another two priests. There's Father Jack Hackett and there's Father Dougal Maguire, and their housekeeper is Mrs Doyle. But Craggy Island is where sort of all the really worst screw-ups get sent.
Huh?
And so Father Ted got
all
sent.
The misfits.
Yeah, exactly.
The church. Yeah.
Precisely, yeah. And so he's there, and so he would be, quote-unquote, the normal one, because he's a functioning human being, however flawed he is. But when you look at Father Jack, who's a way older, completely chaotic, alcoholic scumbag he's always in a drunken stupor, and if you try and wake him up, he's supremely violent, and he just sits in his horrible old armchair, unconscious most of the time, but if you try and wake him up, you'll feel his wrath. But he's so brain dead by this point, he only speaks in single words, which are feck, drink, arse and girls, and so that's all. So he's basically a non-character. So you're left with Dougal and Ted and Mrs Doyle, of course, but Dougal's in his early 20s and he's so unbelievably stupid. He makes Kelly Bundy look like a genius. He's that thick, but he's just got this wide-eyed, childlike innocence, be completely useless as a priest. That's the humour, obviously, is that how on earth did this guy even make it through seminary school or whatever? I don't even know. But they've all been sent there for various reasons, which you find out more about as the series goes on.
Yeah.
And so they've just got to deal with whatever the situation is that week, which might be something handed down, like a dictate comes down from the bishop to do something which places them in an awkward situation, or one of the parishioners will be doing something and they have to deal with that, or it'll be one of Ted's schemes. So that's, well, we can go into the characters more when we watch it, but Father Ted only ran for 3 seasons.
Okay.
This is between 95 and 98, which is probably the natural span of how long it would have gone anyway. But then one day after they wrapped the filming for Series 3, Dermot Morgan, the main character who played Father Ted, he died of a heart attack.
What?
How
old was he?
He was 45. Scary, eh? I know. So as far as the network goes, this was on Channel 4 in the UK. And of course they were responsible for the young ones back in the day and all that sort of thing as well.
And you've already said it ran for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Over 3 years. Famous stars?
Okay, well, I think all these guys became famous after being on Father Ted, so you can't say, okay, before the show they were X, Y, and Z. But Ardal O'Hanlon, of course, went on to be Thermo Man, if you remember the sitcom My Hero.
Yeah. And he plays Dougal, does he, in this?
Yes, he does. Yep. And Pauline McLynn, who plays Mrs Doyle, was in a bunch of comedy stuff, but, I mean, none of them have really, aside from Ardal O'Hanlon, gone on to headline their own shows. And so if that's the criteria I'm using, then beforehand, none of them were really headlining their own shows as far as I know. And then afterwards, they're not headlining their own shows. So the whole star power thing doesn't really apply for Father Ted.
Okay. And your background watching it, did you watch it when it was transmitted or
No.
later?
No, I didn't. I got a test disc, which I've still got from a friend of mine called Joe. And Joe was doing reviewing for Express and a couple of other zines around the place. And he got a review copy and then lent that to me. And I just thought it was fantastic. So then I went out and bought some more.
Review. He was doing a review of the DVD when it came out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, the discs I've got here, if you look at the label, they're like white label with a stamp on them. You know, they've got the proper covers and everything, but they're not the commercially released DVD.
That's pretty cool.
Mm.
There you go. We're going to go and watch it now.
Yes, we can. And then, whereas normally we'd talk about the characters a bit now, we'll go away and watch it, and then we can discuss the characters in their context when we get back.
Sounds good.
All right, let's go.
Right, the raffle. Let's go through it again. I'll fill the hat with a load of tickets, all with the same number on them. Say 11.
11. 2 ones. That's easy to remember, Ted.
And then when I'm doing the draw, we'll make sure that you have that number.
Right. So we won't have to cheat at all.
Well, that's actually how we're cheating, Dougal.
All right. Okay. Okay, so let me get this straight. You'll be wearing the hat.
No, I won't be wearing any hats. The tickets will be in the hat.
Gotcha. But you'll put on the hat to give me the signal.
I won't be giving you any signals, Dougal. I'll just pull out your ticket and you say, that's my number, and come up and collect the prize.
There's a prize, Ted. What is it?
The car!
All right, Steve, so there you have it. We've just watched Series 2, Episode 2 of Father Ted. Think Fast, Father Ted. What did you think?
Pretty funny. They get into some scrapes. What a bunch of misfits, though.
Yes, you're right.
Seemed like there was almost as many priests on that island as there were
Yeah.
parishioners, or yeah.
Well, that's right. Or maybe they just, when you need the spin master, he just comes over from one of the other islands.
Hops on a ferry or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, yes, you continue. You were about to say something.
Yes, I was saying I enjoyed the Spin Master. He only had one record in his collection.
Yep.
And the Dancing Priest, he was pretty cool too.
Yep.
Yep.
Father Finnegan?
Pretty amusing.
Oh, good. All right, well, you can chime in as I take the listener through the episode.
Yeah. Go for it.
Right, will do. Look, I'll just be upfront and say that I picked this episode, and then after I watched it, I was even more amazed by it than what my memory had thought. And it's so textbook, brilliant, and there's so many little ways that it's done its job geniusly to, at least at Faulty Towers level and things like that I could write, a 10,000 word essay on how they did it all. And so this will be a long rambling sort of thing for me. I know I'm just going to miss out so much of what I want to actually put across, but I won't let that hold me back, Steve. I'll just, yes. So even from the get-go, they've set everything up beautifully so you can appreciate the characters straight away. So it opens on Father Jack, and he's sitting there in his chair, unconscious, of course, with all his horrible scab-encrusted mouth and his stains on the wall and his horrible chair that he just lives in.
Disgusting.
And the water is dripping from the ceiling, and it's dripping all over his head, and they pull to a brilliant shot where the water's running down his sleeve, and the camera pans down his sleeve into this pint glass, which is slowly filling up with drips of water coming off the end of his fingers. And, that illustrates who Jack is. It shows you the situation they're in, and it sets up a joke for later on. It's just so economical. And then, Father Ted comes into the room and he spots the drip and he marches over to the television because Father Dougal is sat in front of the television just being a wastrel. And then Ted lectures him on just wasting time watching television, turns it off, and he says, "It's chewing gum for the eyes." And he goes, "Oh, well, no thanks, Ted. I've got these crisps here." And says, "I take one of these salt and vinegars and one cheese and onion, and I put them both together and eat them at the same time." And that illustrates who Dougal is. He's not very bright, and he just likes his childlike things, and he's got his crisps, and that's the joy of his life, and he can just mix up things. And that shows you who he is. And because Ted's been immediately strolled in, taken charge of what Dougal's doing, and he's now working on trying to fix the roof, it tells you that he's the only competent one in the house.
Yes, it's established pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He's conscious, eh?
Yep.
And he's got aspirations higher than mixing chip flavours.
That's right. I mean, that's probably standard sitcom stuff, but when you watch enough sitcoms, you can see people really doing it the most efficient and funny way possible. Anyhow, so we launched into the plot really early, which is there's a leaky roof. They've got to fix the leaky roof. So Ted says, all right, well, maybe we can raise money through a raffle. And they very quickly phone the bishop, who says, yeah, we'll give you a car to raffle. So thank goodness for that. Anyway, so
certainly better than the 2 bags of corn they got last time.
Back in 1964. So we've been launched into the episode here, and so the 3 priests nick off the next day to go and collect the car. But they talk about, before they arrive there, the dancing priest, and they go, oh, remember Father Finnegan got a car. It's not unusual, you know, it's probably our turn to have a car. And Dougal goes, what, the dancing priest? And is he still going? And Ted explains that, yep, he danced his way across America to raise money for peace, and he got mugged every 15 miles on average. And so what they've done there is, it's a very Seinfeldian thing, is that you explain a character before you meet the character. So already you and I, the watchers, have got an image of a dancing priest in our minds, which is already quite amusing. And they've worked a joke into it, which is the being mugged every 15 miles joke. But what they've done is they've seeded a really ultra vital plot point for later on in that conversation about the dancing priest. And you don't notice that they've seeded that this priest has already won a car, because they've introduced it with jokes. And then you think, all right, all that's done is created proof that the bishop will give you a car to raffle every so often, and we got a laugh out of it. Think no more about it. And it hides the plot point. You can see I've gone all way overthinking this, but it's just whereas other sitcoms wouldn't do it anywhere near that well. Anyhow, they have to go off and pick up this car. So they go to the mainland and they pick up this car, and of course there's a brilliant gag on the way back where Ted actually, we find out he's fallen asleep at the wheel and he's been driving for hours completely asleep. And I raved about this scene earlier, about how they set up the shot to show it happening, so that it was just fantastic. Anyway, so they've got this car and they're going to raffle it off. And they finally arrive back at Craggy Island to their headquarters, and as they're getting out of the car, Father Dougal notices that there's a tiny little indent in the car. And Ted goes, never fear, Dougal, we can get that tiny indent and scratch out. Just hand me that hammer and I'll tap it the other way and we can fix it all up. And then comes along what I've called my favourite visual gag ever in the history of sitcoms of all time. And it's the reason why I picked this episode and why I remember it so well. Because I think I nearly died laughing the first time I ever saw this. They cut to a close-up of Dougal and Ted's faces, and they're looking at the car, and Dougal's saying, look, you're never going to get it quite right. You just give up now. And Ted goes, well, you know, I thought I had it there, but I just kept tapping away like an idiot. And then you cut to a picture of the car, which is utterly demolished. And as I said to you earlier, Steve, it was beyond the range of what any human could actually do with a hammer. All the panels are completely dented in. It looks like the surface of a golf ball, and this brand new car's been completely destroyed by Ted.
It's hilarious.
Oh, so they find themselves in a bit of a pickle.
But I don't think we should pass over the fact that this dent was created by Ted hitting someone on the way home from picking the car up. And I thought it was funny that he was in such a hurry to get home with his car that he didn't stop to make sure this person... he saw them... What does he say?
He goes, it's all right. I saw him get up.
Yeah, I saw him get up in the rear vision mirror, but he didn't stop to make sure he was all right or anything like that. But he's prepared to spend 24 hours hammering this car with a tiny hammer
to fix up that problem.
To fix up this little dent.
Oh, and it's not very priestly either. Not stopping to help your fellow man.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, no, that was a good line, that. I mean, there's so many good lines I have to skip over, but yeah, the old, how did that dent get there? Oh, it was when you hit that cyclist, Ted. He goes, don't mention that, Dougal. It's all right. I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw him get up. Oh, but yeah, so we've got past this fantastic gag with the wrecked car. But at this point, Ted remembers that Father Finnegan had got that car last year, and it's exactly the same make as the one they've just been given. So Ted puts it to Dougal that perhaps what they should do is borrow the car, and then Dougal points out that, well, hang on a sec, we can't raffle it because the priest is going to want it back.
Yes.
And this is where Ted
Slight
has
flaw
to...
in the
yeah.
plan.
Ted has to convince Dougal that perhaps what they could do is rig the raffle so that they win the car and then they can return it to Father Finnegan.
It shouldn't be too difficult, let's face it.
No, it shouldn't be, but then we're dealing with Dougal here, and if he's got to be a major part of this deception and rigging of the raffle, and he can barely tie his own shoelaces, and Ted doesn't...
No, I mean the convincing part of this shouldn't be difficult.
Oh, right.
The execution of the plan is a completely different story.
Quite right. So they go to visit the dancing priest, Father Finnegan, to ask if they can have a lend of his car. And of course we cut to Father Finnegan, who's in his living room dancing away. And the music is so funny, and just the dance moves he's pulling, and the intense concentration and focus on his face as he's doing all this. So Ted walks in, and Father Finnegan says, well, just join me in a dance, Ted. And Ted puts up a little bit of resistance, but then joins in. And then you've got the whole joy of Ted dancing along as he's trying to ask this favour.
Yeah, well, he's got to be polite.
Yeah. And that's great. So they get a lend of the car and they drive it back.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we can cut along to the raffle, at which they're starting to talk about the event, and Dougal asks, what's the entertainment going to be? And Ted says, we've got the Spin Master, Father Billy.
Yeah.
And this is a thing throughout the series, is you've got all these... You hear about these priests that have got these unusual hobbies or unusual characters that are very unpriestly, and you don't think of this super DJ as a priest as having a sideline as a super DJ. And Dougal's very excited because he goes, oh, the Spin Master. And that sets us up, as I think I mentioned before, that they introduce a character by talking about them beforehand, which is a very Seinfeldian thing to do. Like when they... Going back to Seinfeld, I just remembered straight away the soup Nazi. So they talk about the soup Nazi, and then you see the soup Nazi at work. And that's what they take from Seinfeld in Father Ted. And they talk about these characters, and then eventually they get introduced. So you get the funniness of your imagination imagining this character doing this thing, and then you actually see them. So you get double the bang for your buck in terms of jokes. Where are we, Steve? I got myself lost before.
Well, we've introduced... Spin Master.
Yep.
And we've set up the raffle, which is it's an event, isn't it?
Yeah.
Held in the village. And they've got the Spin Master. There's going to be... We've got the music, dancing, we've got the raffle.
It's all set up.
There's some booze in the back.
Yep.
The back room, is that for this?
Yeah, that's for the event.
That's
There's
for this event.
All this booze. Anyway, so Dougal's saying, oh, I'm so excited, I can't wait, I'm going to sell so many tickets. I'll sell way more than you, Ted. And Ted goes, well, we'll see about that. And this is when we get back to the character building, because Ted's such a petty dude, is that he's obsessed with being the best and people thinking the most of him, and he'll throw anyone else under the bus to do that. And you see that in all the other episodes. But when a man who's, again, not being very priestly, is driven to feel better than other people to the point where even poor, sweet, innocent, clueless Dougal, he'll screw him over just to... best him. That says a lot about Ted.
Is this why Father Ted acquiesces to sell the Spin Master 1,000 tickets?
This is what I'm trying to set up.
Just to be Dougal.
You're quite right, and we're going to get there. So everything's all set up, and let's just cut straight to the bit where they're at the venue, and of course, he's so impressed because Father Billy's there with his ponytail and his piano jacket and all that, and his beard. And Ted's blown away looking at the whole DJ box. And so Father Billy's explaining how he's going to, use the mixing board and how it all works to Ted, who's really impressed because Ted's obsessed with show business. And he wants to be Elvis and all these other things. And then he goes, oh, so, what records are you going to play us? And Billy's face just falls and he goes, oh, God, Ted, I've forgotten the records. Hang on, I think I've got one in the car. So he rushes off.
It's not what you'd expect, is it? The tune that he brings out.
No.
You know what it is?
Yeah, I do.
What
It's
is it?
The Specials. It's a track called Ghost Town, which has got total cult status, being the song that it is in this episode of Father Ted. It's now got, special cult status, this record. Do you know the Specials?
Not well, no. They're a ska band, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
That's all I need to know.
So Ted seems to have it all worked out. He's got himself over this car thing, and all he has to do is get this raffle going successfully, and he can cover up all his mistakes. But then what happens? The DJ's forgotten the records, so that's one thing that's going wrong. And so, anyway, they're selling all the tickets, and Dougal's having great success at selling the tickets. We've skipped over the bit where Mrs Doyle offers to buy the first raffle ticket off them, and she chooses number 11, which is the number that the boys have chosen to be the rigged ticket.
That's the pre-arranged ticket
That Dougal's going to have when Ted draws it out of the hat.
It's her lucky number.
So anyway, Dougal's nearly completely screwed it up there, and Mrs Doyle's nearly rumbled them, but they managed to put that behind them. So, Ted, not wanting to be outdone by Dougal, he's just been talking to Father Billy, trying to sell him a raffle ticket, and he goes, no, that's gambling, Ted, I'm absolutely not going to do this. And Ted goes, go on, it's one ticket, it's just for charity. Don't be so miserly. And he goes, all right then, yeah. I didn't want to do it because it's ruined my grandfather and my father, and they died without a penny to their name. And he goes, okay, well, I appreciate that. How many can I sign you up for? And he goes, 2,000. So he's going to buy 2,000 raffle tickets, and Ted's going, Father Billy, you can't do this. What are you? That's completely. I'm not taking your check. You can't do this. And then he finds out how well Dougal's been doing at selling tickets and doesn't want to be outdone. So then he lets Father Billy buy 2,000 raffle tickets off him. And this is typical of Ted.
For a rigged.
Yeah, oh no. For a
shocking. It's shocking.
Completely unconscionable. So that happens. And then, even then, because Dougal's going, I can't believe how many I'm selling, I could barely keep a straight face. Nearly rumbling them that it's completely rigged. And needless to say, when Ted gets around to the raffle, after the people there at the disco have danced to the Specials Ghost Town 50 times, because it's the only record the Spin Master can play, they draw the raffle, and Dougal's standing there, and Ted's called number 11, and Dougal's just standing there not saying anything. And he goes, what's that, Father Maguire? You've got the winning ticket? And he goes, oh, sorry, Ted, I was reading the raffle ticket upside down.
I was reading it upside down.
What an idiot.
What a dimwit.
And so they barely manage to get that by the audience, and you'd think it's all safe from here on in, because they've managed to win the raffle, and then somehow they're going to do something to return the car to the dancing priest, who Ted doesn't know is dead. But meanwhile, some other things are happening, and that is that Father Jack is loose on the premises, and he's discovered this massive supply of booze, which he's polished off, and then he realises there's a car there, and he goes off to buy more booze. And so he steals the car, and he's going off to get more drink. And so we cut back to the parochial house where they all live. Is that what it's called? The parish house? The parochial house? The something house?
Doesn't sound right to me.
No. So they cut back to the house where the three priests live, and they're back there after the event. And they're just very happy that they've carried this thing off. And then Jack walks in, and he's got, armfuls of booze. And he said, well, where have you been? And he goes, oh, I took the car. Well, okay, he doesn't say that because Jack's trying to talk in single words. This, actually, for the record, I was researching it earlier, and this is the episode where Jack says the most words. Because prior to this, he'd only said 4 words or something. But now, Jack has to explain to Ted where he's been with the car, and he just goes, car, booze, corner, crash, truck.
Yep.
And all this sort of thing.
And
Ted
smashes 2 cans of beer together to illustrate.
Yep. So now they find out the car has been crashed, and they go out to investigate, and there's a certain camera angle from the front, and it doesn't look too bad. And Ted's saying, this isn't too bad. And Dougal says, that's not too bad. And then they have a side-on view, and the whole back of the car has been compacted in, which is doubling up on the sight gag we had before. And, it's fantastic. And then meanwhile, they've left Father Billy in their house on the phone to whoever he borrowed the money off, the people who he owes the gambling debts to. And Ted's outside looking at the damage to the car, and he goes, well, never mind. At least we've still got the money for the church roof. And then we find out that all the money's been stolen by Father Billy to pay off the debts, and they're left at the end of the episode with 2 ruined cars and no money for the church roof.
And Ted's complaining about someone stealing money
from a priest.
Yes,
it's the height of hypocrisy, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So there we go. That was a long, rambling explanation of that episode that does absolutely no justice whatsoever. It's fantastic. And I had many more notes about how brilliantly they've seeded each of these jokes throughout incredibly efficiently, and how they work on the camera angles to give you the maximum punch to all these visual gags. And it's a masterclass of an episode.
We shouldn't neglect the fact that in the final scene they're sitting on the couch together, and of course the leak in the roof hasn't been fixed, so they've got a plastic sheet draped around them and different plastic hats on, and each of them
fisherman's hats,
water cascading down on them, and they're bemoaning the whole situation.
Yep, and it's all their own fault.
It is.
Alright, so the main points I wanted to get across in that basically were the fixing the car joke, and also how they laid the groundwork with talking about these priests like the Spin Master and the Dancing Priest, and then you get more value for your characters out of that when you actually see them doing their thing. But also the scenes where poor old Father Ted has got to explain how they're going to rig the raffle to Dougal. And he goes, now Dougal, don't forget that I've got the hat full of tickets and I'm going to draw one out and I'm going to say, this is ticket 11 and you're holding ticket 11 because we've previously given that to you, and that's how it's done. And Dougal goes, oh good, so then we won't have to cheat at all then. He goes, no, Dougal, that's how we're cheating. And again, not doing it justice, but just those scenes where they're setting it all up. And then even then, with all that careful planning, Dougal very nearly manages to completely screw the whole thing up. So with all that said, I think this is a good candidate episode for the Hall of Fame. I think it instantly capsulizes everything about Father Ted. You get a really good idea of who they are, what it's all about, and the flavour of surreal comedy that goes on in Father Ted.
Yep, I thought it was really funny, even though I'd never seen Father Ted before. I like the way that they all sabotage the plan in their own subtle ways. Jack drinking all the booze and then going out and smashing the car up, and Ted, doing trying to outdo Dougal and selling all the raffle tickets to the Spin Master, which of course stuffs them in the end. And Dougal, well, pretty much the whole way through, he's
just being an Egypt.
Yeah, just being an Egypt. Yeah.
So all their vices bring them down, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Thanks, Jeff. That was really good. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.